Hey there, I hope you're doing well. My name is Arya and today we're going to look at some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy Reddit stories, consider liking, subscribing, and maybe hitting that notification bell too. Let's get started with today's first story. Much love, everyone. Today's first story comes from husband revenges on cheating wife and AP on their anniversary. The water cascaded over Cindy Melton's skin, washing away the remnants of her evening with Greg Frost. Her superior at work had become more than just her boss. That night Cindy had finally surrendered the last piece of herself she'd been holding back, along with a declaration of her feelings. Initially nervous, Cindy found the experience less painful than she anticipated. This was something she never offered her husband, Denny of nearly 30 years, who never mentioned it. Cindy wondered if she was departmentalizing her relationships, reserving certain aspects only for Greg. She pondered if there was any part of her still exclusively for Denny, as she had never considered infidelity before. Murdoch Holdings, a major investment firm, has a unique and secretive policy. Executives who are all men must engage into some form of relationship with a personal assistant. This unwritten rule, enforced for over 75 years, is a well-kept secret, with employees required to sign non-disclosure agreements, while most PA are single. Some are married and manage to keep their work hidden from their spouses. Cindy Melton, who had always been committed to her husband, Denny, and upheld her marital vows, never wanted to become a PA. However, when Greg Frost, a new executive hired from a competitor in New York, arrived, he initially resisted the firm's policy meeting. Cindy, who had been temporarily assigned to him, changed his attitude. Cindy made it clear that she was happily married and had no intention of changing her commitment. Just so you're aware, Greg, she said, I'm only assigned to you temporarily until you choose a permanent personal assistant. There are many attractive young women available and they would all be eager to work with you, but I don't want any of them. He replied. I want you. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever met and you seem to be a consummate professional. You're the one I want, but you'll be expected to have a personal relationship with your PA, Greg. She said, as I mentioned, I'm very happily married to a wonderful man. Also, I'm 49 years old enough to be your mother, and I have a daughter who just graduated from college. You definitely don't look your age, Cindy, he said. In fact, you look at least a decade younger. Here's what I propose. I'll choose you as my PA, but I won't ask for anything beyond a professional relationship. If nothing else, you'll receive a significant salary increase and considerable bonuses. She recognized he was correct about that. The company offered $50,000 bonuses to PA every 6 months, in addition to a substantial salary. Okay, Greg, she agreed, we can give it a try and see how it goes. There were many disappointed faces when Greg made his announcement, and a few people seemed quite resentful. Everyone was curious about what Cindy had that the others didn't. She told her husband she had been promoted and selected for an executive assistant role, but she never disclosed the specifics of the job. After nearly 30 years of marriage, Denny trusted his wife completely and celebrated her new position with her. Initially, Cindy and Greg maintained a professional relationship. They met in his office 3 times a week on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays from 4 to 5 o'clock p.m. for what was known as PA hours. Unlike other executives, who were involved with their PA, Greg and Cindy would sit on the couch in his office and chat mainly about her family and her marriage. Tell me about your husband, he asked one day during their meeting. Denny, short for Dennis, she replied, served 20 years in the Marine Corps. He was a military policeman and advanced to criminal investigations. He completed 2 tours in Middle East. When he retired, he'd established ties with the local police force, who then hired him as a detective about a year ago. He was seriously injured while apprehending an armed robber. After spending months in rehabilitation, he received a medical discharge and a pension. While Greg said, what does he do now these days? He takes on some part-time work. She replied, he serves legal papers and assists a friend with his private investigation business. He mentions it's mostly uneventful, but he doesn't have to deal with criminals up close anymore. Usually he's just at home. Sounds like he's quite an interesting guy. Greg said, I'd love to meet him sometime. Why not come over for dinner? She suggested Dennis enjoys barbecuing and I'm sure he'd be happy to meet you. Our daughter, Alicia, is also in town, so you might get to meet her too. That sounds great. Greg agreed. After checking with Denny, Cindy invited Greg over Dennis grilled steaks. Alicia joined them and they enjoyed a pleasant evening together. After Greg left, Denny remarked that Greg was nicer than he had expected, noting that Greg's influence seemed to have positively affected Cindy, who appeared happier with her job. Denny jokingly asked if there was anything romantic between Cindy and Greg, to which Cindy reassured him there was not, affirming her love for him. About a month after choosing Cindy as his pa, Greg spoke privately with Aaron Harkness, the executive who had recruited him following a meeting. Is something wrong? Aaron, Greg asked. Do you understand how things work with the pa? Aaron inquired. Yes, I do, Greg confirmed. Are you actually sleeping with Cindy? Aaron asked. No, Greg responded. We become good friends and I've met her family. She's married and says she doesn't want to jeopardize her marriage. I just want to respect her wishes. I get that, Aaron said. I appreciate your perspective, but the pa role was intended for a specific purpose. I don't want to issue an ultimatum, but you need to decide: either become intimate with Cindy, choose a different pa, or we'll need to find a replacement for you. So I either have to be intimate with her, pick someone else, or be replaced. Greg asked, clearly taken aback. I'm afraid that's the case, Aaron said. Greg nodded and returned to his office. He called Cindy in and shut the door behind her. What's the matter, Greg? She asked. I've been given an ultimatum. He said I either have to sleep with you, choose a new pa and sleep with her, or I'm out of a job. Okay. She said, I'll step aside so someone else can take my place. No, he said, placing his hand on her arm. I don't want anyone else. I only want you, but there are plenty of younger single women here who might be a better fit. If you're excited about this story, please let us know. If you enjoyed the video, please press A. If not, press 0. Your feedback has inspired me to collect more uplifting and meaningful stories. She said, Cindy, you're the most beautiful woman in this company. He said, I want to be with you. She looked at him and considered his offer despite being much younger. He reminded her of Dennis when he was younger. She had also developed feelings for him, but what about Denny? She hesitated until he gently cued her face and kissed her deeply. She responded passionately, soon began to undress once they were both without clothes. She rode him to a powerful climax, letting him finish inside her. She wasn't concerned about pregnancy since she had had her tubes tied after Alicia was born afterward. She was overwhelmed with guilt. She had just cheated on her husband of nearly 30 years. Until now, Denny had been the only man she had ever been with. She had broken her vows and become an adulteress. That was incredible. Cindy, Greg Sadu, such an amazing woman. I could easily fall for you. She beamed at his praise and gave him a kiss before getting off him. I should probably take a shower, she said. I don't think Denny would appreciate me coming home with your marks on me. Yeah. I guess not. He said, what are you planning to do about your husband? You mean, am I thinking of leaving him? She asked. No, I'm staying with him, even though we just had this moment. I love him deeply. I do have feelings for you, but if it comes down to choosing between you and him, I'll leave my job and stay with him. I understand, he said. We need to set some boundaries. She said, first, no bad-mouthing my husband. If you disrespect him, we're done. Second, I won't allow you to have closeness with me if I've just been with him. Third, don't ask me to cut him off in bed. If you do, it's over. Fourth, we won't be doing this at my home or in the bed I share with him, and don't ever ask me to sleep with any of your friends or clients. We need to be very discreet about what we do and where. She continued. What happens here stays here, and don't give him any reason to suspect anything between us. If we're at a public event and I'm with Dennis, you'll treat me like any other colleague. Any questions? No, I think you covered everything, he said with a smile. She smiled back, kissed him, and headed to the bathroom for a long shower, and that was how her role as Greg's paid corporate mistress began in the following months. Cindy's relationship with Greg deepened. He showered her with gifts and treated her exceptionally well, but maintained a different demeanor on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Between 400 and 5 o'clock p.m. Cindy appreciated his consistency and adherence to their arrangement. Greg never spoke ill of Denny or requested to be intimate at Cindy's home at company events, where Cindy was with Denny. Greg remained a professional colleague. Denny remained unaware of the affair. When Cindy received her first bonus, she used most of it to buy a new Ford F-150 for Denny, who was driving a 2010 model. Denny was surprised and delighted by the gift, and Cindy claimed it was a reward for being a supportive husband. The bond between Greg and Cindy grew stronger, leading them to refer to each other as work spouses. It was common for executives and PA at the company to form long-term relationships. Greg eventually proposed to Cindy in his office, presenting her with a luxurious pearl necklace and declaring them office, husband and office wife, a title Cindy joyfully accepted. "You may now enjoy your office bride," she told him. "That's the best offer I've received all day." He replied, "Just one thing," she said, removing her wedding and engagement rings. "What are you doing?" Greg asked. "From now on, while I'm at work, I'll be your wife, completely devoted to you," she explained. "When I'm home, I'll be Denny's wife, wholly devoted to him." She placed her rings in the top drawer of her desk and closed it out. "I'm ready, my office husband. Let's get started." Cindy and Greg's relationship grew closer. Greg, already wealthy, bought Cindy a new wardrobe and insisted she wear it at the office. She complied, changing clothes upon arrival, and before leaving, she removed a photo of her and Denny from her desk to avoid reminders of her marriage. Their affair intensified with daily encounters, mostly in Greg's office or condo. Cindy often stayed late, telling Denny she had deadlines, while actually being with Greg during trips back east. Cindy and Greg shared hotel rooms, and she assured Denny they had separate rooms, maintaining secrecy at 49. Cindy felt she had it all: a loving husband, a great job, and a passionate lover. However, she worried about how long this could continue, knowing Greg might eventually prefer someone younger. She also noticed Denny had become withdrawn, started smoking again, and stopped driving the new truck she bought, which concerned her. "Why are you still driving that old truck?" she asked. "Is there something wrong with the new one?" "I'm trying to keep the mileage down on the new truck," he replied. She attempted to probe further, hoping to uncover what was troubling him. "Denny, is everything okay?" she asked one day. "You've been unusually quiet." "I'm concerned about you." "Everything's fine," he said in a flat tone. "Mac has me working on a case involving a cheating wife, and it's really getting to me." Mac was Mike McGregor, the private investigator Denny sometimes assisted. They had served together in the Marines before Mac started his own company after retiring from the police force. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said. "Do you want to talk about it?" "Not really," he said. "I just don't understand it. Why would a woman cheat on her husband and then say she loves him if she wanted to be unfaithful? Why marry him in the first place, honestly? If it were me, someone would end up hurt." She recoiled at his harsh words and wondered if he truly meant them. "Well, you don't need to worry about that," she reassured him. "You know, I'd never do anything like that to you." He stared at her for a moment before answering, "Yeah, I guess I'm pretty lucky, huh?" he said with a forced smile that lacked warmth. She smiled back, but in her mind she started to question whether he knew about her relationship with Greg. Back in the present, Cindy finished her shower, carefully drying herself and brushing her hair to match its morning appearance. She took meticulous steps to cover up her affairs from Dennis, even using the same soap and shampoo she used at home. Dressed in her work clothes, she headed to the office and gave Greg a passionate kiss before leaving his office. Returning to her own office, Cindy unlocked her drawer to retrieve her rings, but was shocked to find them missing. She always stored them in a specific, secure part of the drawer, so their disappearance was inexplicable. She searched frantically, but there was no sign of them. Since rushed back to Greg's office. Distressed, Greg immediately joined her in the search, but the rings remained elusive. He suggested leaving a note for the night cleaning crew to keep an eye out for them, reassuring her that they would be found. Cindy was worried about Dennis noticing the ring's absence. Greg advised her to say she had taken them for cleaning and resizing. Cindy was reluctant to lie, though she had been doing so for months. She reluctantly accepted Greg's suggestion as she left the office while he wrote the note for the night crew. Friday, 5:15 p.m. Dennis and Cindy Melton's home. Dennis Melton, reflecting on his life, recalled meeting Cindy at the end of his first enlistment, instantly smitten. He married her, respecting her choice to remain innocent until their wedding. Eventually, her father accepted him as a son-in-law, asking him to take care of my little girl, no matter what Denny promised for nearly 30 years. Cindy was a devoted wife, handling Denny's constant deployments and irregular hours. They faced hardships, including the death of their first child, Leah, from SIDS and 2 miscarriages. Despite these challenges, Cindy agreed to have her tubes tied after giving birth to their daughter, Alicia. After Denny retired from the Marine Corps and became a detective, Cindy worked at Murdoch Industries. They lived a stable life until Denny was severely injured in a bank robbery, leading to medical retirement. Following his recovery, Denny took a part-time job as a process server and became a licensed private investigator. With restrictions on his work, Denny was thrilled when Cindy got promoted to assistant for a new executive and noticed she seemed happier and more relaxed. He was even more surprised when Cindy brought home a new pickup paid for with a bonus from her job as a gift for his support. However, his world came crashing down the following Monday when he received a call from Terry Knight, a colleague of Cindy's, while at Ma's office after a surveillance operation. She requested a brief meeting, suggesting a coffee shop on Riverside in 3rd. Dennis agreed, proposing to meet in 20 or 30 minutes. Terry declined to explain the purpose of the meeting over the phone, promising to provide details in person. "I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, Mr. Melton," she said, "but your wife is involved with one of our executives." "Just call me Denny," he replied. "What exactly do you mean by involved? Is she having an affair?" "I'm afraid it's more than just an affair," she said. "Are you saying she's actually in love with this executive?" he asked. "That's what it seems like," she answered. "It looks that way to me." "Who is this executive?" he inquired. "Is it Greg Frost?" "Yes, it is," she confirmed. "How did you know?" Cindy mentioned she was hired as his executive assistant. He said, "I've met him and he seems like a decent guy." "Are you sure Cindy's involved with him? He seems a bit young for her." "Doesn't he?" Greg picked her, Terry explained, "and she's not really an executive assistant, she's a personal assistant, and part of her role includes sleeping with him." "How long has this been happening?" he asked. "Just over 6 months," she said. "Why are you telling me this now, and why did you wait so long?" he asked. "Well, I have to admit part of my reason is personal," she said. "I was hoping he'd pick me instead, but he went with a married woman, who's much older." "No offense intended." "None taken," he replied. "I understand. Perhaps I should discuss this with your management." "Oh, please don't do that," she pleaded. "Why not?" he asked. "We all bound by non-disclosure agreements," she said. "We not supposed to discuss these arrangements between executives and their assistants. We could lose our jobs if we do." "I understand," he said. "So, do the same rules apply to female executives?" "No, the company doesn't hire female executives," she said. "It may seem a bit outdated, but as far as I know, there's never been a female executive here. Many have applied, but none have been hired." "That's interesting," he said. "Are any of the other assistants married?" "Yes, a few are married, but most are single," she said. "What about their spouses?" he asked. "One doesn't know about the arrangement and the other does," she explained. "He's disabled and can't work. They need the extra income, so he doesn't complain as long as she doesn't flaunt it." "How much extra do they earn?" he asked. "Well, their salary nearly doubles and they receive a $50,000 bonus every 6 months," she said. "That's after taxes." "Wow," he said. That explained where she got the money for his new truck. It seemed like a guilt-soothing gesture. "Now, how often do they meet up?" He asked the company has scheduled PA hours when assistants and their executives meet. She said that's every Monday, Wednesday and Friday from 400 to 5 p.m. However, many, like your wife and Greg, arranged to see each other at other times. So Cindy is with him right now? He asked. She nodded. Yes, she confirmed. Could you do me a favor? He asked. I'll try, she replied. Could you keep an eye on Cindy and Greg for me? He requested. Let me know if you notice or hear anything important. I think I can manage that, she said, but I'll have to be cautious. I understand, Terry, he said. I don't want you to jeopardize your job. I should get going, Denny. She said, standing up. I'm really sorry. This happened. I'll keep you informed if I learn anything new. Thank you, Terry. I'm more grateful than you realize, and I appreciate you being honest with me. He said once she had gone. He sat quietly trying to process the news she had shared. It felt like he'd been hit hard in the stomach, so this is how Cindy chooses to repay 30 years of loyalty. Checking his watch, he saw it was around 430, which meant Cindy and Greg were likely halfway through their PA hour back at the office. Dennis hoped to catch Mac before he left upon arrival. Mac noticed Dennis's distress and asked what was wrong. Dennis revealed that he had learned of Cindy's infidelity with her boss through Terry. Mac suggested they discuss it in his office. Dennis recounted everything Terry had told him. Mac advised Dennis to gather evidence, noting that, without it, Terry's claims were just hearsay, given their nearly 30-year marriage. Mac found it hard to believe Cindy would cheat. Mac provided Dennis with a hidden audio recorder, instructing him to place it in Cindy's purse. The device could record up to 18 hours of audio from up to 50 feet away. Mac also offered to look into video surveillance options. He cautioned Dennis to avoid acting suspiciously or doing anything rash. Dennis agreed and went home. He discreetly placed the recorder in Cindy's purse and attempted to act normally over the next few days. He observed Cindy closely but found no evidence of infidelity, such as unusual cologne or other signs. Dennis watched Cindy for any signs of unusual behavior, but saw none. She changed out of her work clothes as usual and went to prepare dinner, maintaining her routine. When they went to bed, Cindy claimed to be too tired for closeness. A frequent excuse lately, although Dennis was unsettled by Terry's claims. He hoped they were unfounded. The following evening, Dennis retrieved the audio recorder from Cindy's purse and listened to the download file. The recording revealed Cindy begged Greg to do her harder. Afterward, Cindy mentioned needing to shower to avoid raising suspicion and exchanged "I love you" with Greg. The next morning, Dennis scheduled a divorce consultation with a lawyer. Mac, who worked with various divorce attorneys, had arranged for Dennis to use a camera in the block building to monitor Cindy's office. At the attorney's office, Dennis presented the evidence. The lawyer explained that in a no-fault state, the grounds for divorce were limited to irreconcilable differences. Although adultery might influence asset division, Dennis inquired about taking action against Cindy's boss or her company, but the attorney noted that suing for alienation of affection was no longer possible. Though he would explore options regarding the company, Dennis requested a clean split, keeping half of the assets in his retirement, and preferred to serve the divorce papers himself on their 30th anniversary as a form of revenge. After paying the retainer, Dennis returned to the office, where Mac showed him footage of Cindy removing her rings and changing clothes. Disturbed by the sight, Dennis noted Cindy's new, more expensive outfit and a new necklace. He decided to rent a small one-bedroom apartment and put down a deposit. After reviewing his budget, Dennis was scheduled to start moving into his new apartment on Monday. After it was cleaned, he withdrew half of their checking and savings accounts from the bank and opened a new account elsewhere. He then went to the 15th floor of the Parker building, where he had often visited Cindy, avoiding detection. He used a lockpick kit to open her desk drawer and retrieved her rings. He also found a picture of them from a vacation years earlier, which he closed back in the drawer. Before leaving the office, returning home, Dennis drank a beer and smoked cigarettes on the back deck. Cindy joined him, expressing concern over his drinking. When asked about her rings, Cindy claimed she had taken them to be cleaned. Dennis noticed her guilty demeanor and commented on their 30th anniversary dinner reservation at Mangera. Cindy seemed surprised by the reservation and suggested changing the celebration to the weekend. Dennis insisted on keeping the anniversary date and Cindy reluctantly agreed. He knows, she thought to herself, that's the only thing can explain his behavior. Oh God. What have I done? She asked herself, and can I ever fix it? She changed clothes and went back downstairs to fix their dinner. The next day, Denny listened to the latest audio from the device planted in Cindy's purse. His wife let Greg to do her in the aholi. He was never into that, and as far as he knew neither was she. He felt like strangling her when he heard her tell him her aholi was his exclusively. He had to get out of the house before he said or did something stupid. He drove to a park, letting his emotions out, and realized he needed to talk to someone. He called Alicia, his daughter, who invited him over when he arrived at her apartment. Alicia made him coffee and he revealed the painful truth about Cindy's infidelity. Alicia was shocked and questioned whether there was a chance to repair their marriage. Dennis explained that the affair was more than a one-time mistake. Cindy had even stopped wearing her wedding rings and had been receiving gifts from her boss. Her company encouraged this behavior as part of their executive compensation. The affair was with a younger man, Greg Frost, who was 30 and had a history of seducing older women. Alicia suggested that Frost might have an Oedipus complex but expressed concern about Dennis's intentions towards him. Dennis acknowledged he couldn't sue Frost but planned to ensure he faced consequences. After their discussion, Dennis felt a bit better. He realized he had been gone for over 2 hours and decided to head home. He walked into the house and took in the surroundings everywhere. He looked. There were reminders of 30 years together, the last decade or so spent right here. The weight of the memories almost brought him to tears. Cindy was outside in the backyard tending to her flowers, as if nothing was amiss. He couldn't understand how she could cheat on him and then come home acting like everything was perfectly normal. He shook his head and grabbed a beer from the fridge before heading outside, taking a seat. He opened the beer and lit a cigarette. Cindy noticed him from the deck as he settled in, and she walked over to him. Dennis, we need to have a talk. She said. Oh, about what? He responded. About us, about everything. She said, you've been distant, irritable, and off all week. You haven't told me you love me, and you haven't even touched your new truck. Did I do something to upset you? Her question caught him off guard. He wondered if Greg had somehow influenced her behavior. You tell me, he said. Have you done something to upset me? Not that I know of, she said, avoiding his gaze. The thought of confronting her about Greg nearly drove him to snap. But if I have, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Please, Dennis, talk to me. I hate seeing you like this. I feel like I'm losing you. That's because you are losing me, you stupid hoe. He thought to himself. After a moment she continued. I know you dealing with that case alongside Mac, and it's clearly stressing you out, she remarked. Perhaps you should reconsider working with him. If it's affecting you this much, I've never seen you so distressed about a case before. It's nearly resolved. He replied. It'll be finished soon. I hope that's the case. She said. I really don't like seeing you like this. It's tough on me too. How about letting me help you unwind tonight? It's been ages since we've done anything together. What do you think? Denny pondered her suggestion before responding. She made a good point. It had been a long time since they'd been intimate, and after Wednesday there was no telling when they'd have the chance again. Maybe he thought this could remind her of what she might lose. He smiled at her and then spoke. Sure, that sounds like a great idea. He said. She beamed and kissed him. I'll make it a night to remember, she promised, and it turned into a night neither would soon forget. Denny was more vigorous than he had been in a long time. His energy intense as he took his soon-to-be ex-wife. Several times not even Greg could match what Denny was doing to her. She thought. Then, her husband surprised her by turning her onto her stomach and asking her to get on her hands and knees. What are you planning, Denny? She asked. It's a surprise, he said, applying their combined juices on her rear when she realized his intention. She tried to move away, but he stopped her. No, Dennis, please. She pleaded. We've never done this before after 30 years. I think it's time we try something new. He said. I'll be gentle. I promise. He slowly entered her from behind and was taken aback by how tight she felt. He thought to himself that they should have tried this much sooner. Cindy, on the other hand, was deeply unsettled. This was supposed to be Greg's exclusive area. Why had Denny suddenly decided to do this? She realized she couldn't exactly tell her husband to stay out of what was Greg's domain, so she tried to relax and accept what Denny was doing. Oh, my God, she thought, as he pushed further inside her. After their final climax, Dennis withdrew and went to the bathroom to fetch a couple of warm washcloths, one for himself and one for Cindy. He handed her a washcloth while he cleaned up for a moment. He thought she might start crying. Why did you do that? She asked. You've never shown interest in that before. Your rear looked so tempting, I just couldn't resist. He replied. I didn't hurt you, did I? I'm sorry. If I did, no, you didn't hurt me. You just took me by surprise. She said. You were incredibly intense. What brought this on you? Did he answered. You looked so alluring. I couldn't control myself. She smiled and hugged him. I love you, Dennis Melton. She said. I hope you never forget that, and I love you too. He said. They drifted off to sleep in each other's arms, feeling content. Denny wondered if this might be the wake-up call she needed. They slept in late on Sunday and Denny headed downstairs for a bacon and egg breakfast. Good morning, sleepyhead, Cindy said. I hope you slept well last night. I sure did. I'm still feeling the effects of what you did. He smiled, trying to mask the discomfort. He felt. I'm glad, he said. Looks like the old man still has some tricks up his sleeve. Yes, I slept better than I have in a while. After breakfast, he went out to the backyard and started up his lawnmower, possibly for the last time. He mowed the lawn and put the mower away. Taking a final look at his work, he would miss this yard. He thought they were intimate again that night, but Dennis avoided Cindy's rear end, since she was still a bit sore from the previous night's activity. That was fine with Dennis, simply knowing that Greg Frost's exclusive area was no longer off limits was enough. Satisfaction for him. After they finished, Cindy rested her head on Dennis's shoulder. Please don't forget how much I love you. She said. I'd be completely lost without you. I love you too. He replied. It was true. He still loved her, which made her betrayal all the more painful. That night, before heading to bed, he decided to place an audio device in her purse, hoping she would tell Greg that their relationship was over. Monday, 2 days before day, Cindy felt rejuvenated when she left for work. That morning, after preparing a nice breakfast for herself and Denny, she kissed him goodbye and practically skipped out of the house. A wide smile on her face watching her go. Denny hoped she would make the right choice. When she arrived at work, she breezed into Greg's office, picked out a lovely dress for the day and changed into it. Putting on the necklace Greg had given her when they became office spouses, she greeted Greg with a warm hug and a kiss. You're in a great mood this morning, Greg remarked. I assume you had a good weekend. The best, she replied. Denny and I reconnected this weekend, and it was amazing. I see, he said. Did he leave anything for me? She laughed. Oh, there's plenty here for you, my office husband. She said. Everything okay at home? Then he asked. Yes, now it is, she said, but I think we need to be extra cautious. Oh, why? Greg inquired. I think he's becoming suspicious. She said. He was in a terrible mood all last week, dealing with a case about a cheating wife, and it really got to him. He didn't even drive his new truck once. You don't think he might get violent? Do you? I mean, he did serve in the Marines and was a cop for over 10 years. Greg said. Of course not. She said. Denny's a softie underneath. Don't let his tough exterior fool you. By the way, I'll need to skip pause hours on Wednesday. Why is that? Greg asked. That's our time. You know, I understand, but it's my 30th wedding anniversary. She said. Remember what I mentioned when we first started this? If I had to choose, it would always be him. I'm not going to ruin our anniversary. I suggested moving it to the weekend, but he refused. Besides, he's already booked a table at Mangiacati. At least he has good taste, Greg commented. Of course, she replied. He married me after all. Greg laughed, lifted her up and kissed her. Yes, he did. Greg said, well, since it's your 30th anniversary, I think we can work something out. Maybe you and I can take a weekend trip somewhere. Deal? She agreed, but not too soon. I want to make sure Denny is paid. His mood first. Something's really bothering him and I hate seeing him like this. Do you think he knows about us? He asked. I'm not sure, she admitted. Maybe that's why I think we need to be cautious for a bit. By the way, what did you tell him about your rings? Greg asked. I told him what you suggested. She said that I took them to be cleaned, and he believed that. Greg inquired. Yes, Cindy confirmed. Has anyone found them? No, he said, shaking his head. No one turned them in, and apparently no one saw anyone coming into the office on Friday afternoon. Any idea what could have happened to them? She asked. He shook his head. I have no idea, he said. I'm as puzzled as you are. I'll keep looking and asking around. They must be somewhere here. Okay, she said. If nothing turns up, maybe I can buy a replacement set if necessary. I'll take you to get a new set, Greg said, since it happened in my office. I feel somewhat responsible. That's very kind of you, Greg, she said, but this is on me. I'm the one who took them off and put them in my desk drawer. It's fine. I can put them on my credit card anyway. I should get to work. Speaking of work, Greg said, there's something I wanted to discuss with you. What? That she asked. Since we're office spouses and you've already committed to me fully at work, I was wondering how you'd feel about adopting my last name. He asked. Just in the office? Of course, the other executives have been discussing it for a couple of weeks and they might make it a policy. Cindy paused to think, then smiled. Cindy Frost. She said, I like the sound of that. Sure, but let's hold off for a bit, maybe a week or so. As I mentioned, Denny's been really grumpy lately and I want to make sure he's okay before we move forward with anything. All right. Just let me know when you're ready and I'll have HR update the directory. Greg said. We'll do, she replied, then cheerfully left his office. Later that morning, Denny received a call from his lawyer John, who asked him to come by the office after lunch to review the divorce papers. After signing, he asked about the case against Murdoch. John presented another set of papers for a claim of intentional infliction of emotional distress, explaining that it met all legal criteria due to the company's actions contributing to Denny's marital breakdown. John had set the claim amount at $30 million to attract attention, though he anticipated a lower settlement. He offered to take 10% of any settlement given Denny's connection with Mac. They agreed to file the papers on Tuesday and serve Cindy on Wednesday morning. Denny planned to meet JN at Murdoch at 9:30 a.m. to proceed with the case on Tuesday. Greg Frost sat at his desk and thought about the current state of his life. He had a great job that paid a lot of money and better. Yet a warm, willing and beautiful, older woman for a toy. Cindy had just left the office to get their lunch. He knew that after they ate they'd be turning their attention to each other soon. He thought she would be completely his and her loser husband would be powerless to stop it. He had played this game many times before with other older women, but out of all the women he had seduced, Cindy was the best. He was jolted back to reality when his phone buzzed. Recognizing the number, he answered. Frost, he said, as he answered the call. Greg. It's Denny. The voice on the other end replied. Hello, Denny, it's great to hear from you, Greg said, with a sly grin. What can I assist you with? I'm planning a little anniversary surprise for Cindy and was hoping you could help me out. Denny said. Certainly, Greg said, I'm happy to assist in any way I can. Perfect. Denny said. Leighton meet at Murphy's bar at around 5:30 this evening to go over the details and keep this between us. No mention to Cindy. Got it, Denny. Greg said. I'll see you at 5:30. Great, Denny said. See you then, he concluded before hanging up. Greg put his phone back in his pocket and wondered what Denny was planning. Maybe, he thought with a grin, I'll leave a little surprise for Denny, which he'll find in Cindy's V later. He then turned to his computer and began searching for male chastity devices after work. Greg went directly to Murphy's and parked in the lot. The small bar was located at one end of a strip mall in an older part of town, though he didn't feel entirely at ease in this area. He figured it was still early enough. He entered the dimly lit pub and saw Denny seated at a table on the far side of the bar. Two rugged-looking men at another table watched him closely as he made his way to Denny. Denny had a laptop open on the table and was typing when Greg arrived. He paused his typing and looked up as Greg took a seat across from him right on time. Denny said, "I appreciate punctuality. Would you like a drink?" "Yeah, a beer would be great," Greg replied. Denny signaled to the bartender and ordered 2 beers. The bartender brought 2 cold bottles to the table and Denny paid him before he left. "So, what's this surprise you mentioned?" Greg asked. Denny smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Well, as you probably know, tomorrow marks my 30th wedding anniversary," Denny said. "It's hard to believe that a woman like Cindy has been with me for 3 decades. Who would have thought?" "I understand what you mean," Greg said. Denny nodded in agreement. "By the way, Greg, what was it like doing my wife in the holy?" Denny asked. Greg looked startled and began to respond, but Denny cut him off. "Don't bother answering. It was just a rhetorical question. I know what it's like. I did it myself last weekend." "Didn't she tell you? I thought you two talked about everything. After all, she is your work wife, right? You're the reason she takes off my rings when she arrives at work. Aren't you?" Greg stared at his beer, feeling embarrassed. "Denny, Greg started to say, but Denny interrupted him. "So you want her to use your last name at work, right?" he asked. "Are you planning to add her to your health insurance too? She's 49, old enough to be your mother? You seem to have a thing for older, married women. Don't you?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Greg replied. "Don't play dumb with me, Greg," Denny said. "I know all about you. Does the name Robin Harkness mean anything to you, or Janice Taylor, or Brenda Smith? They all have similar stories, older, married women, some quite wealthy, and you somehow end up being mentioned in their wills. How do you manage that?" Greg. "No need to answer. I already know so. What's the deal with you and older women? Is it some sort of Oedipus complex? Did you have unresolved feelings for your mother as a child?" "What's an Oedipus complex?" Greg asked. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, I forgot." Denny said. "You probably missed that in your modern education. Maybe you've never even heard of it." Greg was starting to get irritated. Who did this guy think he was? "Look, Denny, I care about your wife," he said. "Not the best thing to say to a man with a gun who knows you've been sleeping with his wife for 6 months or more?" Denny retorted. "All right. What do you want from me?" Greg asked. Denny turned his laptop around to show Greg the screen. "What's this?" Greg asked. "Don't you recognize your company's Outlook web access site?" Denny replied. "I see that," Greg said, "but what's on the screen?" "That's your resignation letter," Denny said, "effective immediately. I've already included the email addresses of your superiors, board members, and HR department. All you need to do is sign electronically and hit send. Then you can leave." "I've got a better idea," Greg said, his face reneging. "How about I kick your A and then sleep with your wife in your bed while you watch?" Denny chuckled at that. "It's true you're 20 years younger than me, in good shape, and don't have a bad leg to contend with, but you're overlooking a couple of things." Denny said. "Oh yeah, like what?" Greg snapped. "First off, I'm carrying a weapon," Denny said. "Second, I've been in law enforcement longer than you've been alive. Along the way, I've learned a few things, like how to make someone like you vanish without a trace. No one will ever find your body." Greg stared at Denny, stunned. "You'd really kill me?" Greg asked in a heartbeat. "A holy," Denny replied. "It's up to you. We can handle this the easy way," he said, gesturing to the laptop, "or we can take a more unpleasant route and do it the hard way. Either way, you're out of my life forever. Personally, I'm kind of hoping you picked the latter. It's been a while since I've had to end someone and my trigger finger is feeling a bit twitchy. So all I need to do is sign and send this email." Greg asked. "What happens then?" "Then you leave my city tonight," Denny said, "and you never come back." "Not ever, but I have everything in my condo," Greg said. "Already taken care of," Denny replied, pulling out a key. "These 2 gentlemen moved your belongings to a storage facility about an hour and a half from here. Here's the key to your storage unit. It's been paid for the month." Greg glanced over at the 2 bulky men sitting nearby. They didn't very welcoming, Greg reviewed. The resignation letter Denny had prepared, he had to admit Denny had a talent for writing. After reading it, Greg signed electronically and clicked send. He handed the laptop back to Denny moments later. They heard Denny's phone buzz. I included my email address in the ABCC field. Denny said, now, leave my city. These two gentlemen will guide you to the state line. Don't attempt to contact me, and definitely don't try reaching out to my wife. Defeated nodded and got up to leave. Denny rose as well and walked around the table to face Greg. If we ever cross paths again, Greg, you'll regret it, Denny warned. All right, Greg said, you win, no hard feelings. He asked, offering his hand. Denny glanced at the hand for a moment before shaking it as they shook hands. Denny pulled Greg closer and kneed him in the groin with his good leg. Greg collapsed to the floor in pain. The bartender glanced over briefly. He's fine, just slipped on a wet spot, Denny called out. The bartender nodded and returned to his duties. Denny grabbed Greg by the hair, forcing him to look up. Be keeping an eye on you, Greg. He said, if I find out you're messing with another man's wife, I'll track you down and end you. Got it, boy? Yes, sir, Greg stammered. Denny released him and addressed the two men with him. This trash out of my sight and out of my state. He ordered. Right away, boss, one of the men replied. They grabbed Greg by the arms, helped him up and escorted him out of the bar. Denny watched them leave and then noticed something on the floor by a chair. Bending down, he saw it was Greg's phone, which must have fallen out when Greg hit the floor. He turned it on and found it was locked. Curiously, he tried 1234 pressed. Okay. Surprisingly, the phone unlocked. He shook his head, incredulous. What a fool, he thought. He turned the phone off, pocketed it and headed home. Wednesday. The day Cindy woke up early and noticed that Denny's side of the bed was vacant. She hoped he was still downstairs, so she quickly threw on a robe and dashed down. They had a long-standing tradition of exchanging anniversary cards in the morning, and she wanted to catch him before he left in the kitchen. She saw that the card she had bought for him was still on the counter unopened. She had hoped to find a card from him as well, but instead there was a note that read, had to leave early to handle something. See you at Manicotti at 600, happy anniversary, Greg. This was unusual. She thought there were no words of love and he always leaves her a card to open. In the morning, worried, she went back upstairs to get ready for work at the office. She went into Greg's office but found it empty. He was usually there before her. She noted. She looked around but found no trace of him. His jacket wasn't on the rack and his coffee pot was still off. She took out her phone to call him, but it went straight to voicemail as she turned around. Robert Jones, the CEO, entered the office holding a piece of paper and delivered the shocking news. Greg had resigned. Robert handed Cindy the resignation letter Greg had sent after leaving the office. The letter explained that Greg was resigning from Murdoch Holdings effective immediately, citing his discomfort with undermining Denny's marriage. Cindy, in tears, read the letter twice before handing it back to Robert, who told her to keep it. Robert expressed surprise at Greg's sudden decision, noting that Greg had shown no signs of dissatisfaction and had performed well. He asked Cindy if she had discussed anything with her husband, to which she replied, no. Understanding the emotional impact, Robert suggested Cindy take the rest of the week off, assuring her that her position was secure in the parking lot. Denny and John watched from John's car as Cindy, clearly upset, got into her car and drove off. JN looked at Denny and asked, are you ready? Let's go, Denny said. They exited the car and walked into the building, taking the elevator up to the executive suites at Murdoch Holdings. Upon reaching the floor, a receptionist attempted to stop them from entering Robert's office, but Denny flashed a badge allowing them to proceed unimpeded. Robert looked up, clearly startled, as the two men entered his office without knocking. Who are you two? He asked. What's the meaning of barging in here like this, Mr. Robert Jones? Denny inquired. Yes, that's me, Robert replied. Denny took out a manila folder and set it down on Robert's desk. You've been served, Denny announced. Served? Robert asked, visibly stunned. For what? It's all detailed in the paperwork, John answered. Your company and its top executives are being sued for intentional infliction of emotional distress. What? Robert said. Are you out of your minds? What are you talking about? One of your executives, Greg Frost, was involved in a 6-month affair with my client's wife, which has ruined his marriage and caused him significant emotional suffering, John explained. Furthermore, your company pressured him into this illicit relationship to keep his job. As a result, my client is seeking $30 million in compensatory damages. Now, I'm certain you've lost your mind. Robert said, first of all, Greg Frost no longer works here. He resigned last night. He turned to Denny and added, wait a minute. I recognize you, you're Cindy Melton's husband, the retired cop who got hurt. Are you representing him? That's correct, Denny said, Robert's face flushed with anger. As he looked at Joan. You can take this ridiculous lawsuit and shove it where the sun doesn't shine. Robert said, then, you can watch while my lawyers rip this defamatory nonsense to pieces. Mr. Jones, we've got audio, video and eyewitness accounts backing up all our claims. John said, and you know the saying, discovery can be ruthless. You're well aware of the damage this lawsuit could inflict on your business. Just imagine the fallout when people learn that your company has been forcing its executives to engage in illicit affairs with their assistants for over 75 years. And what about the fact that there isn't a single female executive here? I've spoken to several highly qualified women who applied for executive roles only to be told they weren't suitable. Trust me, Mr. Jones, I'll be outside the courthouse every day, broadcasting to the media about how Murdoch discriminates against women and wrecks its employees' marriages. We also know you're paying your pa up to $100,000 a year for favors with their assigned executives. That sounds a lot like sleeping services, which is illegal in this state. I'm sure the DA would love to get their hands on that. So if you want to file a countersuit, that's your choice, but it's going to cost you a lot more. We're both reasonable people and open to considering a fair counter-offer. What do you say? John said. Robert, stunned, listened in silence as JN laid out his position. After a moment, Robert looked at Denny. How long have you been married to Cindy? He asked. Today would have been our 30th anniversary, Denny said, but instead of celebrating, I'll be serving her with divorce papers. Tonight. Robert's demeanor softened slightly at this revelation. He turned back to John. All right, you made your point. He said, how about $3 million to settle this? Will that make it go away? John glanced at Denny before responding, then looked back at Robert. That $3 million is after taxes. John said. Robert sighed deeply before responding. All right, he said, is there anything else? Yes, Mr. Jones, Denny said. What is it? Robert asked. First, you need to stop this practice of yours, Denny said. Second, you have to offer Cindy Frost position. She has a business degree and has been working close with Frost for months. She probably knows his job even better than he did. Robert considered this for a moment before replying, and you agree to sign a non-disclosure agreement. If we agree to this, he asked. Denny glanced at John before answering. Absolutely, Denny said. All right, I'll need to discuss this with the board. When do you need a response? Counselor, he asked John, preferably by the end of the day. John said, I think we can keep the media off our backs until then. You'll have your answer by then, Robert said. And Mr. Melton, I genuinely regret what happened with your marriage. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Denny said. They shook hands and then JN and Denny left. Well, that went better than I expected, JN said once they were back at his car. Yeah, it did, Denny said. Just one more thing I need to take care of. Trust me. You'll be all right, John said. Just give it some time. Denny nodded in agreement. Cindy parked her car and rushed to the elevator for Greg's condo, but upon arriving, she found it empty after searching the place and calling his name with no response. She drove home in tears. She spent the rest of the day crying, then began preparing for her evening with Denny in the master bedroom. She was shocked to discover that many of Denny's clothes were missing from the closet and dresser. Panicked, she reassured herself that it was just a mistake or a joke. After a shower and makeup, she forced herself to believe that Denny wouldn't leave her. Arriving at Manja Cat-Eyes, Cindy noticed Denny's old pickup in the parking lot and hoped the evening would resolve everything inside. She was led to a secluded table where Denny awaited dressed in a suit and ready for their meeting. He seated her, just as he always did, and then took his place across the table. They ordered their meals and a glass of wine. They made small talk and exchanged pleasantries as they ate. After finishing their meal, Cindy lifted her glass to 30 years of marriage. She said. Denny nodded and took a sip. Cindy continued, and to another 30 years of wedded bliss. Before taking a drink herself, Denny shook his head and set his glass down. Cindy stared at him, stunned. "I'm sorry, but that's not going to happen," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "What?" she asked, clearly shocked. "Why not? You're not naive, Cindy," he said, "and neither am I. I just need to ask you two things. Why and how long were you planning to keep deceiving me?" "I honestly don't know why," she admitted. "Greg reminded me so much of you when we were younger, and he was so kind to me. I just ended up falling for him." "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you, and I certainly didn't intend to make you look foolish." "Seriously," he retorted, "you're old enough to be his mother. You brought him into our home, served him our food, made me believe he was a decent guy, all while you were giving him what was supposed to be mine. Even worse, you were being paid by the company to be his object," he added. "Do you know what they call that in this state?" "What?" she asked quietly. "Sleeping for money," he said bluntly. "Is that what you've become, a hoe?" "Oh God, no," she cried out. "The bonuses and extra money were for the services. I provided sleeping services," he corrected her. "No matter how you put it, that's what it was. The money for that new truck, well, that was earned through your infidelity. You want to know why I don't drive it anymore? Because it symbolizes betrayal. Every time I see that truck, all I can think about is you letting Greg have his way with you." "You saw that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Oh, absolutely, absolutely," Denny said. "I saw everything, and you know what was worse than watching you two behave like animals? Seeing you take off your rings and shove them in your desk drawer like trash. You were so embarrassed by me that you couldn't even wear my rings at work. Then you lied, saying you took them to be cleaned." "I'm sorry," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I went to get them and they were gone. I didn't know what to say, so I lied. I'm really sorry. It won't happen again. I promise. I know it won't," he said, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket and placing it in front of her. "Cindy Melton, you've been served." She shook her head, sobbing uncontrollably. "No, no, no. I won't accept this," she pleaded. "I don't want a divorce, Denny. Please tell me this is just a joke." "This isn't a joke, Cindy," he said. "I've struggled with this all week and I'm done." "You still haven't answered my second question. How long were you planning to keep making a fool of me? Were you going to keep seeing Greg until you retired?" "I don't know," she sobbed. "And this nonsense about taking his last name at work," he continued. "Were you really going to do that too?" "I don't know," she cried. "Please stop, Denny. I can't handle any more. Too bad," he said coldly. "Now you're getting a taste of what I've been feeling for the past week and a half, but there is one good thing that's come out of this." "What's that?" she asked, desperate. "You've been promoted," he said, with a smirk. "You've been chosen to fill Greg's position. Congratulations, you're now Murdoch Holdings' first female executive." "You know about Greg leaving?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "Yes," Denny replied. "I had a straightforward talk with him and convinced him it was best for him to leave." "And how did you manage to get Murdoch to give me his position?" she inquired. "I had a bit of help from a skilled attorney," Denny said. "Denny, I know it sounds cliché, but it was just act with Greg. It didn't mean anything," she pleaded. "Can't we move past this?" Denny smirked and pulled out Greg's phone. He opened the voicemail app and played her last message. "Greg, sweetheart. Are you okay? Please call me. I'm worried, love." "You?" Cindy's voice echoed. Denny shut off the app. "Sweetheart, love you," he said, mockingly. "Sounds to me like someone deeply involved." "No, Cindy. We can't move past this. You made your choice and now you live with it. Just so you know, you're not the first older woman Greg has deceived. Let's hope "You're the last." He reached into his pocket and pulled out another envelope, tossing it on the table. "Go ahead, open it." He instructed. Cindy opened the envelope to find 3 rings inside hers, and she stared at him stunned. "You took my rings?" she asked incredulously. He nodded. "Yeah." He said, "If you didn't want to wear them, I figured I might as well take them back. I almost cut them in half, but I thought you might need the money from selling them, so we're really done. Aren't we?" she asked. He nodded in confirmation. "Yes," he said, "and just so you know, I've already informed Alicia and your family. They're not exactly thrilled with you at the moment." "You told them?" she asked, horrified. "What exactly did you say?" "I told them the truth. He said you cheated and I filed for divorce. That's pretty much the end of it. The house is yours, we'll keep our own retirement accounts and split. The bank accounts I've already taken. My share. I've started moving some of my things out of the house. I'll need to come back for the rest. Just let me know when it's convenient. You can come by anytime, Denny," she said. "As far as I'm concerned, the house is yours too." "All right," he said, "I'll be leaving now. Happy anniversary." "Goodbye, Cindy." She reached out to stop him, but he was already at the counter settling the bill as he walked out. She felt tears streaming down her face. The divorce between Denny and Cindy proceeded smoothly. Cindy signed the papers and returned them to John, who filed them with the court. The divorce would be finalized in 60 days. On Monday, Cindy returned to work to hear about her promotion, which was significant news for the company and even made local headlines. The company also announced that executives would no longer be required to have closeness with their pa. New executives would have assistants without this component, and Cindy helped implement stricter harassment standards. Both Denny and Cindy focused on their work and did not date. Cindy continued to wear her rings, feeling still married to Denny, while Denny struggled with trust issues. 6 months later, Denny walked Alicia down the aisle and attended her wedding with Cindy. They held hands and danced together. Several months later, Denny was sitting in his truck, observing a client's spouse ruin her marriage out of nowhere. He experienced a sharp pain in his chest that spread to his left arm. Realizing what was happening, he tried to call 911 but died of a heart attack before the ambulance arrived. Cindy, heartbroken, joined him in death a few months later from a stroke, though Alicia knew her mother's real cause of death was a broken heart. Cindy was buried next to Denny. Greg Frost, who continued pursuing older married women, met a grim fate a year after Denny confronted him. He was caught in bed with another woman by her enraged husband, who fatally blew his balls off. The husband was found not guilty by reason of temporary insanity and subsequently divorced his cheating wife. "I'm going to turn this one over to you. What do you make of this situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, support, and time mean the world to me. So, thank you so much for being part of this. I really appreciate your time. I'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.